Hey, y'all. This is Reverence for Impulse, and I'm Weena Pauly-Tarr. This podcast is my attempt to more deeply understand and explore impulse through conversations with people that inspire me. We step into connection without any planning or agenda, but with respect for the impulses that brought us here and shape how we are when we're together. I'm so glad you followed your impulse to listen in. Luis and I had a sweet, slow, and spacious connection, and I loved spending time with him and his brilliance. Luis and I met in somatic experiencing school, and I had an instant draw to his open heart and sharp mind. In this podcast, we talk about our work moving to virtual during COVID, impulse and what it is, and how it relates to his work with food and nutrition, and how making music and dance keeps us grounded. We also explored the possibility of a deeper somatic exploration of performance. If you don't already know his work, you absolutely should. He's at holisticlifenavigation.com. Go check it out. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I felt so good in my body. I was watching your body and all these things were awakening in me.
I had less a sense of myself as a mover. Like I felt like I had to make contact with something and feel its edges, because I think I'm not clear where mine are right now, maybe, or I don't have the same like tangible clarity. And it felt so good to feel the wood and where it ended, and like closing the drawers felt really nice, solidly having them close. And then, and not quite finding 3 minutes as short in some ways for me to sort of find my pocket of curiosity. And it's also leaves me really curious, sort of open, not channeling in one direction, but sort of like, I don't know where I'm going to land. That's how I felt. And then witnessing you, one, your eyes were open, which I'm not used to. And it was like, I felt so vulnerable watching you with your eyes open. Like you could see me seeing you, which is startling and sort of intimate, like, right. And then when your camera moved down, your feet were so cute and your socks. And I was like, I wanted to hold your feet. They're the wool socks and just slide. It was so adorable. And your feet on the wall. Something about your feet. Like, have I ever seen your feet? I don't know. I think you maybe had shoes on, but to see your feet in socks was very sweet. And then watching you, I don't know. It lights me up. Like I feel, it's the word that always comes up is like adorable, but that sounds so demeaning. It's so much deeper than that, but there's an adoration there for sure. So
I'll take adorable. I know adorable in some contexts can be, reductive, like you're saying, but I think it's excellent. I think there's such a tenderness to adore something or someone. And so I don't feel minimized by that. I think it's like that feels really gooey.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to when I was watching your body, it's so fun. It's so fun to do this work online. You and I trained together in person, and then the thrust of this work, like the majority of me doing it, has been online in the last 3 years. And I get such a transmission still because my eyes are seeing a body. So as you were moving, I mean, so much was unlocking in me just to watch somebody move without words. And it was just very liberating.
Yeah. I feel that too. I think the possibility of what the sort of magic of virtual connection, one, it feels like a muscle I've had to practice, but also simultaneously let go of my limitations around it and really enter into the magic of, I want to say theater, but not because it's theatrical, but because it's framed
Mhm.
and I can't touch you.
Mhm.
So there's some imaginal aspect of being able to really feel presence. It feels like it ignites my imagination when I let it. When
Mm.
I let that go, then I really am with you.
Mhm.
My body is with you. So then my constraints are, oh, but this is tech and he's on a screen. But if I can let go of that, I really am sharing time in a deep way with you and your body.
That's so profound. I did one advanced training module with Josh Sylvet online, and it was around touch, which was really funny. And so when you were saying, I can't touch you, we were all saying that when we went into this weekend. Like, we can't touch each other. How are we going to do touch? And what
Mm-hmm.
was so profound was the somatic experience of being open to touch. So we'd be in front of each other. Let's say you and I are in a session, and I would say to you, how would it feel if I put my hands on your shoulder? And you'd have to notice, are my shoulders even open to the idea of Luis putting his hands there? And it brought in this whole other detail, this kind of precious detail about relationship with what's my
Yeah.
physical physiology in receiving touch. Not even the touch itself, but the receiving of the touch is actually where the healing is, right?
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
You get that. It was so
Yeah.
powerful. I couldn't get over it.
Oh, yeah. And there's already, when we talk about, I talk about edge zones a lot. Like it's not a line boundary. It's like this, if you went like this and scrolled into a boundary, it's actually a
Mm.
zone. That
Mm-hmm.
feels like that zone that you can be inside of contact, actual, where it's physically, there's a meeting of two things, but there's that whole space in between that has so much information, like you're saying.
That's right.
Oh, I
That's
love
right.
that.
Like, I could touch you, and if your body's not open to that, it will do nothing.
Yeah.
On top of nothing, it could do a lot of harmful things inside of you,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just powerful to think, well, the receptivity, the consent of the body to open to touch what you're saying with zone is this big part of the zone. And so these people on the screen, we were learning with each other, we were having immense inner healing and metabolizing of trauma occurred just from imagining someone touching and the shoulders opening to that. It was profound.
Wow. And even where we started, which was my desire to touch your feet, like I could kind of imagine the socks and like a foot within the sock. Like there was a
Yeah.
desire to feel the soft and then, bone, or there's some, the I can use my imagination to imagine what it might feel like. And isn't that what we're all doing anyway?
Yes.
It's sort of a imagining what it is. How receptive are we to what the actual I mean, sure, we're receptive to that exchange, but to what degree?
I mean, you and I were trained in the somatic experience of image, of one of the many things we were trained in. So what you're speaking to is that it's like when I'm imagining, consciously or subconsciously, it doesn't actually matter. There's a somatic response to that. So I think the screen is profound in actually amplifying this skill set that we wouldn't notice in person as much. The separation gives us more awareness of what's going on in our body in a way.
Mm. Ugh, I love that. I'm so bored by conversations that are like anti-tech. You can't do this work online. Like I don't know. I'm
They're
just,
too
it's
obvious.
boring.
They're too
It's,
obvious.
yeah, for sure.
I
Like,
agree. I agree.
okay. So yeah, I could really run with that.
Mhm.
Do you do so? Are you doing in person also?
I closed my office completely a year ago. Is that right? Yeah, a year ago I closed my office. And so I'm doing some retreats, which I'm really excited about. And so I'm going to play with in-person group, which feels so delicious. As I know you do in-person group work too. It's so new for me.
Yeah.
I had done it in the past, but not somatically. I did it with other modalities. This is gonna be my first string of several. Yeah.
Mm. You excited? Are you nervous?
I'm so excited. I was invited as a guest to a weekend immersion last year in Pittsburgh with this group. And my work was to do somatic integration around what they were doing, like ego death shadow work. And my day of Sunday was like somatic integration day. So it was my first day to really play with like 35 bodies and what do we do with them when they're all having these huge experiences, and it was profound. And so if it's anything like that, I'm not worried at all. I'm super excited. Yeah.
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 Does it feel different energetically, like the how you care for yourself, or before and after? And like, what are
Mm,
I think the transitions are the most, I'm still getting used to, again, reused to the ins and outs of in person
mm.
for myself and the space that I'm holding.
The transition word's a good one because I started noticing this when COVID began in my office because people couldn't come into the office anymore. Well, they could, but it didn't seem like the right thing to do. And so we did everything on the phone or online. And I noticed this ease in my body because before I had my room, I had a waiting room and then the hallway. And so I could hear that first door come when they came into the hallway. And then I could hear them come into the weight room. And, and there was this feeling, this tension in my body, this proximity of these bodies like waiting to come into the space, right? And with that gone, I didn't realize how much tension I held with that, with that physical proximity of need and waiting for a session and the transition of getting someone out of a room and having 10, 15 minutes alone, if I even have that much before the next body comes in. Whereas with the computer, you press the button and they're gone. And and there was this instantaneous kind of, oh, I'm with myself again. Like the boundary is so cut and dry in this way that it wasn't in person. So the transitions that really speak to me when you say that. That's gonna be my edge this year, is learning how to care for myself, how to not fawn, really, how to hold the space I need so I have the energy to continue serving through the weekend. So I'm actually really excited to learn that. That's going to be new for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, I did a in-person seam recently, and it was so funny because I've only lived in person, as most of us have, but my work has never been on a computer. Like I've never even had a desk until 2020. I didn't
It's
even
amazing.
know what it meant to sit at it was a big learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to in person, I felt so out of practice with those transitions and the time that they need. I
Mm,
mean, for people, even just logistically gathering your stuff, your water bottle, using the bathroom, the little bit of banter that happens. I mean, it's at least 15 minutes.
mm-hmm.
So it was hilarious because I hadn't really factored in all the settling and unsettling and that happens in person, that is just part of being in relationship with people because they don't disappear. So
That's such a
um
good way to say it. Yeah.
oh yeah. And I think, I don't know about you, but I definitely prepare for sessions online. There's like a thing I do. I'm sure you do too. And but then they're there. It's not even like, or for example, the studio's on the second floor. So you go down the stairs and I mean, there's all this movement through space and with time that I hadn't accounted for. So that is also a learning for me, is being attuned and attentive and relaxed around that. I think it just takes more time than I imagined.
I was going to ask you about that because I like the idea of time being brought up here. Um, I felt this when I did the first Tending the Roots summit, with Korean, was that
Mm-hmm.
feeling of, oh, I'm just here suddenly. you know, like when I used to
Mm-hmm.
do things in the city, or I would go somewhere else to do a retreat in another state or something, not a retreat, but a workshop or like a guest speaking at a retreat, you'd be on the train, you'd be driving, there'd be this
Right.
whole like ritual your body would go through before you even got there, right? And I think that's what the ease for me, but it can also be the overwhelm with the screen is it's all so quick. There's suddenly all these bodies there and then they're all gone. Whereas that piece you're talking about, that relation piece with time, like when I think of decolonizing time, I think of time as like a physical experience rather than just a linear one. I'm curious how it will feel to have a whole weekend with people, and the body of the weekend, like what we call time, is really the lights, the dark outside, the cold, the hot, the getting hungry, the going to the bathroom, all these things that are biological when people share space. That's going to be so interesting and new.
Mm, yeah. I'm excited to hear how it goes. When is it? In, you said in the
May,
fall?
and
Oh,
yeah,
May.
May's the first one.
Okay.
Yeah, I forget when, the first weekend in May, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Um, so impulse is like a guiding lighthouse for me in these conversations, but I don't know what that word means to other
Mm,
people.
mm,
So I was thinking of your work. I mean, I know very little just from following you as a friend and being like a fan. Um, which in some ways is sort of how I do these is I don't do a lot of research or reading because I want to know you this way.
mm-hmm,
Um, but I thought of impulse and I thought of where it would fit in given the little I know. But then I thought, actually, I don't know if that's your version of impulse or not. So that would be my question. Like, what is impulse to you?
mm. It's so simple and so deep for me. There's so many parts. The simple answer is just the way my body moves itself, something that comes through it that isn't a thought or even a desire, but just happens and I notice it or I don't. That's the short answer.
Mm, I love that.
What's
Yeah.
it to you? What does it mean to you?
It changes and it sort of morphs. To me, it's the thrust or like the spark of aliveness.
Mm,
And it's the thing that makes me know I'm here, that I'm alive. Um, but I would say it is also that um, beyond my control or agency and alongside it sometimes.
mm.
Yeah.
I love the aliveness piece because the part about impulse that becomes very spiritual for me is really that it's in my experience is life force, and I think sometimes the word trauma can get overcoupled with pathology, whereas I really see trauma as just lots of life force and it gets stuck essentially. So when you're talking about it lets me know I'm alive, part of my work that's I think unusual is I help people realize that their trauma is how they know they're alive. Like this feeling inside of them, this anxiety. That's your aliveness. Your body just doesn't know what to do with it, so it's overwhelming you, and it kind of transforms these states and these symptoms and these mental imbalances, everything that we get from these traumatic experience transforms them from a glitch into something actually really beautiful if we can learn how to relate to it, and like when you said alongside my agency, almost like learning how to shepherd that that life force through you so it's not just wreaking havoc in your shoulders, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. I think it's the piece that feels hard to bring language to is the part that while it's my aliveness, it's not me
that's
necessarily, right?
that's right, that's right.
And or mine. And so um when I can capture that, there's such an overwhelming sense of excitement, but gratitude and an awareness of um what do I want to say? Gift isn't quite the right word, but it's something along those lines of precious or something that
Mm-hmm.
holds that and animate isn't quite the right word either, because it um
And gratitude really resonates for me. And I mean,
yeah.
the word I'm hearing is sacredness. And I
Mhm.
think there is a real gratitude when it's not me. It's this thing moving through me. And it's amazing that something moves through us to propel us from a car when it's about to hit us. I mean, it blows my mind. It's so beautiful.
Unreal. Yeah.
Unreal. Yeah.
Hmm. The
Humbling, right?
thrust of survival, like the thrust to live, the
Mm,
and it impulse to me is the origin of movement. So whether that's sort of chosen or shaped or not, it is where it is the home of movement. So I think that's why I feel so drawn to know it or relate to it. And I say it in Authentic Movement a lot, that it's not necessarily about following impulse, but relating to impulse. Because I can have a secondary impulse that's to not follow it.
yes.
Right.
Yes. The relating is a word that I love to use all the time when it comes to this work for the same reason you just said, because an impulse could be an overcoupling, it could be a trigger, it could be, there's so many things it could be that don't actually belong in that time and space to that person in front of you. It belongs in another time and space. So if I relate to it, I get to learn, oh, where do you come from? What do you need? Rather than just letting it, reflexively scream at people all day long, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I heard your podcast with Maureen, which was so lovely. And given that she was our first SE teacher together,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I remember just being in awe of her precision and clarity and like groundedness. It was as a teacher, it was unique to feel both that sort of precise, really like zingy clarity with the kind of earthy groundedness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I really appreciated that. And listening to both of you, I thought a lot about interrelationship focusing and the tool of that and how beautiful it is. Um, so I was thinking about impulse there, but my understanding from what I know is that you've worked with nutrition and food for a long time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I feel that's um I feel very curious about impulse as it relates to that also.
That's a great question. Nutrition is what brought me into trauma work. I don't think I would have ever done trauma work if I didn't start with nutrition. Now that you're asking this, it was the relationship between impulse and food. I didn't have those words till now that created such a curiosity of how trauma manifests, let's say through diet, through habits, through rituals, cravings, let's say. So when we think of impulse in the nutritional world, I would call that a craving. It's like there's this
Mm,
force that propels you to a food, whether it's a bag of chips, whether it's coffee, whether it's cake, whether it's chocolate, it propels you to it, just like any substance on the planet, television, drugs, whatever it is. But in the context of food, it's like there's this inner propellant. And what you said that I loved, how it's not mine, the amount of shame I was experiencing in my practice, my nutrition practice, for people feeling really responsible for these food impulses, it was off the charts. And it just served to immobilize them and create more impulses toward these foods. So as I was getting this somatic language, I started bringing it into the food. I call it the sovereign body, really what you're saying, but I just call it the sovereign body. So they could understand, it's not me craving this, it's my body craving this because it gets some biochemical change from it. And so I would think of like coffee, for instance. You wake up really tired, your adrenals are super fatigued. That depressive state in the body can be really scary, especially if you've had depression or there's something in your day coming up that you need adrenaline for. You need more charge and activation to proceed to or pursue. being with kids, working, whatever the situation is. So your body has an impulse to something caffeinated. It has an impulse to skip breakfast. It has an impulse toward a lot of sugar. All three of which raise your adrenals, your adrenaline levels by stimulating the adrenal glands. So suddenly you have this excess adrenaline in your system, this activation, this ability to mobilize. It came from that impulse toward an activating food or a food habit, right? So I would see this over the years with my clients, like each one, different emotions and biochemical states reaching out toward different foods that like perfectly related to that state to give it the desired, response or change. That's how I relate impulse with nutrition.
It's interesting. So being from the dance world, since I can remember, and still part of it, I always say I'm not, but I am. I have a show coming in May. I'm doing
Awesome.
performing. Um, yeah, I hope you can come. It's really weird and twisted. It's a
Oh,
dance
well,
theater show.
Weird and Twisted are my middle names. So send
Okay.
me the information, please.
Yeah, I will. But that's, food and body uh control and domination and shaping is such a crucial part of that culture. And so for me, my life's work has been so much about the reclamation of body and movement away from um, an oppressive lens and more of a birthright lens.
Mm-hmm.
And with food, it's this, I mean, I know it's related, and it also feels still sort of the uncharted zone of, I do feel a reclamation of food in that I came from systematically eating for my work. And I was in a company that was so incredibly intense that if you didn't have enough calories, like, you could be severely injured. So it was the kind of thing where you had to eat enough to be on point. You had to eat enough to fuel your body. It was very much athlete style. And timing, right? So like how long before a show, how long. I was very top down. And
Yeah.
part of my whole healing was throwing every rule out and eating whatever the fuck I wanted, whenever I wanted, was the swing back. And then learning how to feel what I wanted, what would feel good, what would be, and that's still a journey. And I, I have conversations with a lot of people in the sort of fitness athlete world around it. And there's this general distrust of doing that. A general, like, if you did that, you would be eating donuts all day, which I just think isn't true. But I also understand that fear, which I'm sure you've reckoned with. And for me, when I say impulse in food, I see that reaction. Like, it would literally just be impulse after. And part of me thinks that the impulse isn't being related to, it's only being followed. So there's not actually there's no moment inside there of feeling the desire or feeling the impulse. It's just the quick motion afterwards. So I don't know how, I mean, I hear you say craving, but I'm curious, how do you support someone's, or do you even support someone's relationship to eating as a sort of reclamation of their bodily impulse? That's a weirdly worded question.
No, it hits home. It hits home
Okay.
because there's so much to it. There's when you say your example, which is great, if I don't do this, I'll sit at home and eat donuts all day. It's like that story comes from a felt sense, like to the IRF, a place inside of them that says, I'm tired of not being able to eat what I want to. I'm going to eat whatever the fuck I want, even if it's a case of donuts all day. There is that part that is being present or felt subconsciously, like that fear. because the boundary of desire, the boundary of pleasure with food, the boundary of even the healthy impulse to eat something, it's been violated so many times with an oppressive schedule, something that dominates the body instead of, again, relates to it. I put food in the category of co-regulator. I don't see it as like a non-living substance. I see it
Mm.
as a body, because it is. Whether it's a tasty cake, which is a highly processed body, or it's an apple, which is, right from the tree. These are bodies that came from the ground, some that came from animal bodies that have information, from their life, that we call nutrients and amino acids and enzymes and such. So when the body's taking that in, that's like, I mean, when you're talking about touching my feet, like, what's more intimate than taking something into your body? Like chewing and tasting and swallowing into your stomach, and it becomes you. I mean, I don't know anything more intimate than that. So I see food and eating as a co-regulator, as an intimate relationship, as animism, a body with a body, connecting. So I say that because a lot of these impulses, if we see it through the lens of craving, let's say, they if we go into relationship rather than follow, there's so much to learn in the impulse. So much to learn. You can learn based on what your body is having the impulse to eat. You can learn what state your nervous system is in, where your emotions are, what kind of support your body is desiring. Very simple example is someone I worked with that would eat like a whole pizza every night, like at 9-10 p.m., and following the impulse. Now, this person's life was so overwhelming, working several jobs, dealing with complex PTSD, super activated, global high kind of expression. And their body needed anything it could get to slow it down. And the way the body breaks down lactose and wheat flour, and in high amounts, especially in salt and oil, is it slows everything down. It exhausts the liver. So the body has to divert its energy from other places just to digest this huge pizza, which means I go from feeling anxiety in my chest to feeling nothing in my chest. So the body is having a impulse based on a need to be slower, to be held, for warmth, for pressure and grounding even. And when we relate to the impulse through nutrition, then we learn what's behind the craving rather than good or bad. It's actually, well, what's behind it? What's the part inside of me that reaches for it? And then you start finding other ways to meet that need in addition to what you're already doing with food. And then it just starts balancing out because you have more options.
Mm. I mean, all those words could be moved around to be with movement.
Tell me
Like
what you
a,
mean.
like everything you're describing with food, I think of similarly with movement.
Absolutely.
So and it's interesting, this is a place where I get philosophically conflicted and sort of I feel my inconsistencies, I guess, is when I say me and my body, just in general. And I'm starting to play with the idea of impulse as more of what I would identify as me or I. But I still feel very, very attached to the physical presence of me is so me. It's so much me. It's so much you. It's not just a vessel or an animated robot, right? Like um, and so in relationship to me and impulse, right, it becomes complicated and becomes like the snake eating its own tail a little bit because I'm having an impulse or my body's having an impulse, but I'm both of those. Or who is it? And it doesn't matter in the end of the day because at a certain point I realize I'm sort of just catching myself in an eddy of wanting to simplify something that's probably beyond my grasp.
I mean, I'm with you on that. And where I've come to, and this will probably change at some point in my life, but is just the witness. Like when we talk about the consciousness and the conscious mind, the simplicity for me is those things are all happening through me and I'm able to witness them. So they're not me. And so it's so complex because it isn't just a vessel. To me, it's a living, breathing being that expresses me in this lifetime, right? And I get to witness it, so I'm not it. So it's this, right? It's this interesting dance between body, impulse, and witness is really how
Yeah.
I see it.
I mean, I feel like you're describing authentic movement, really, because there's
Mm,
the mover and the
mhm.
witness, and then there's the field that they're within, or so
That's
it
right.
does feel, it's to me that I think it's probably why that practice is so resonant for me, is it is an expression of what we're talking about, and it's an expression of relationship. And that's the thing. I think the only way I can get out of that spinning eddy is to remember a teacher that told me when I was flailing around about what is the difference between me and my body, and them saying, think of it this way, it's purely functional. You can do that because now you have something to relate to. And
Mm,
so if we're not just one thing and you pull it apart, now there's a space and now you can
mhm.
relate. And it feels like what you're talking about is relationship. And that feels like I have spent many years trying to sit in meditation and focus inwardly, and that has brought me a lot of different skills. But the one that has lit me up is the one where I'm aware of being in relationship, and that's my focus, which could be your point of context for meditation. But for me, it felt like drifting away, or sort of a dissociative way of being with myself, rather than an engaged understanding of being in relationship to constantly. And I hear that in what you said, which I don't know that I've quite understood it quite like that. Um, so thank you for that.
Thanks for saying what you just said, because that piece about the separation is super important for me. And when I teach my own philosophy around the sovereign body, that's exactly where I'm coming from. Is unless there's that witnesser, there is no relationship. So I am the anxiety, I am the impulse purely, I am whatever my behavior is. But the moment there's that space and I'm witnessing it, oh, there's a relationship forming. And a relationship is just where it is for me in this lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
especially that
Same.
self relationship. And and I had the same experience around meditation. It's highly dissociative for me.
Mm-hmm.
I get so much more out of somatically witnessing everything than I ever did in meditation. And that's just me. It just doesn't work for my body.
Same. And I think of it with when I think of you as a musician too. You're engaged in the act of creating sound and touching a thing. And that
Mm,
is, I mean, that feels like what movement is. And it's more than movement, it's being in a space and touching the floor and feeling motion. But impulse, so here's another curiosity I have is how do you think of impulse as it relates to music for you?
mm. Well, when you were saying about music, it was really feeding me. And I was thinking about how music is so about movement, and not even as the one making it moving, even though that's a big part of it, but letting it move through you, like being a conduit for something that moves is also part of the relationship of movement. And so when you say impulse, for me, it's a feeling starts to kind of unravel from my body, and I'll hear the feeling as a note, or as a couple lyrics in a song, or some kind of like lyrical melody. We'll call it a melody. Will unfurl from the sensation, just like when you're hungry and you suddenly taste the food you want to eat, or you imagine in your mind. It's the same thing, but it's with music. And for me, it's largely the piano. That's what I play, and I sing too, but the piano really kind of does it for me. And so I'll just press a key, again, in this case, following this impulse. And each key brings up, it's almost like if you drop something in a dusty room, all this dust comes up, all this sensational dust emerges, and then the next note does it again. It just becomes this incredible dance of the instrument touching it, like you said, touching the thing. And then it relates to a part of me I didn't even know was there, that I feel through sensation. And it's just this reciprocity between the two.
And are you hearing a sound and then trying to make the sound in the world, or is
Mm,
it happening at the same time? Like, are you
both.
following, sort of stumbling? Okay.
Yeah, there's times where I clearly hear a melody and I go to the piano and kind of relearn it from what's in my brain, and then it takes on its own kind of life. Or it's a felt sense. And because I've played piano for so long, I can feel how my hands just want to go to the key and kind of let my body move it. And then I have to relearn what my body's playing. It's not in my mind. So it's both.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing.
Do you improvise?
I do, but not well. And what I mean by that is
What
there's
does
no
that
method.
mean?
It means if I was all by myself on a stage, it would be amazing. If I had to do it with other musicians, it would suck
Ah,
because
okay.
I don't have theory. So I don't hear a note and just know what keys to play. It's like purely just coming through in that moment. So it doesn't sound good with other people. Unless they follow me, it would sound great. But I can't every
But
my my greatest issue is when I go to like a band, like we're gonna play a show somewhere. I was, oh, let's jam for 15 minutes. I'm like, no, I can't jam for 15 minutes. A nightmare. Are you kidding me? So I just
I,
sit it out usually.
yeah, you say no. I
Yeah.
mean, I bet if there was, if you here's my theory. You'll try it one day and let me know.
I want
I
to,
bet
yeah,
if you
please.
sat in there and just improvised with other people long enough for all the music theory, like, oh, I should be matching, or what are they referencing, or I could hop on that, for all that to go away, and you
Mm,
found the water that you were swimming in together, something you could move through and maybe not even understand, I bet you would find like a sweet spot of listening and responding and feeling your own
mm.
thing.
I'd say you're correct. Yeah. As you're saying it, I can see moments where I was able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot overcoupled there, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just in how music is supposed to sound, right? Or
Hmm.
like what goes together.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
I think some of the most delightful things that I've in making this show, we aren't building from improvisation, but there are parts of things that we have kept, and they are those improvisations that you had no hand in. You have no idea where it came from or what the fuck was
Mm,
going
hmm.
on. It's not even yours, but you're like that, whatever that was. We have to hold that. We have to find out what that was.
Yes,
And
yes,
I
yes.
mean, it's hard because how do you keep it living when you capture it? And
Mm,
this is like
mm,
this is my art task right now, and it's
hmm.
been really hard, which is living in the world of improvisation for a while now after being so taught how to move
Yeah.
going the other way, and now trying to say, if I make decisions, can I stay as alive and present with them as they're happening, even though I know what they are, which I'm
Mm.
sure is what every performer is trying to do. But for some reason, it just like became very clear that that was what I needed to figure out, how to make it alive, even
I
though.
love you saying this. It's so validating because that's my biggest conflict as a musician is what you just said. It's not
Mm,
writing the work, it's not recording it. Those are my two favorite things. It's performing it because I'm really imitating something that was once really authentic and natural and I had nothing to do with. And I'm really bad at imitating. So
I,
so I'm learning like how can I start performing in a somatic way that is calling these songs in on this day at this moment that
yeah.
isn't just pure imitation, but I'm breathing it again, right?
Oh my God.
We should
Exactly.
we should play with that together because I could use some help around that.
Me too. And play with, like, it's not faking it. It's
Mhm.
just being, I think it's being seen. Well, here's, I guess, the choices have been made, but there's just like when we zoom in on that edge, inside the choice is a million ways of how,
That's
right?
right.
And how do we find the aliveness in the how of that? Um,
Mm.
I don't know. And there's something, I don't want to let go of also I don't know if you have this, but when when you do something very skilled, there's something really like zingy and satisfying about that too,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
isn't so much about like making it alive. It's about doing it really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if that brings on aliveness, maybe. I don't know.
I'm just feeling it as you say that, because even how you said zing, that would infer that there's an aliveness there. Because if I hit a certain note and I really feel it just purely move through my body in this way without any constriction, I feel so alive in that note, like what we would call like a technical way of singing something. And if I hit the note in a way where I'm not really aligned with it, it didn't really come out the way I wanted it to, or it wanted to, even if there was constriction, something feels left out, right? So it's interesting. It's interesting around what you're saying with skill and the zing and the technical piece. Like, how do we, in a way, I see it in my mind right now as a scaffolding. Like this technical part is the scaffolding, and the life gets to be so liberated because it's so well held by the scaffolding, right? Instead of one or the other, like it's not held at all and you're flailing, or it's so held there's no life in it. You're constricting. It's life force. So that's really the art of performance, isn't it? Like you vacillate between those. They
Um,
relate to each other.
Done.
Okay,
Figured it out. We've got it.
let's go teach a workshop on this now.
Oh my God. Yes. Um, I wanted to let you know it's 5 till 1, and I want to honor your time. And you have till
Thank you.
1, is that
I
right?
have till one, yeah.
Okay. Good, good, good. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's something too about being seen. I've been thinking about this a lot. My daughter does circus. And so there's something I've grown to really appreciate about circus because it is so honest. Like, look at me do the super cool trick. And you do the trick, and then everybody laughs. It's like there's no like pretend. I'm
Hmm.
like cool. Oh, I didn't even know I was so cool. It's like, no, no.
That's a good point. I like
I'm
that.
really doing something crazy, extraordinary. Clap for me. And then we clap. There's like
Yeah.
this very pure exchange. And it's also the willingness to take risk. Think of juggling and fail. I mean, that's definitely on the table. Jugglers drop things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this willingness to fail, be seen fail. We all know you failed because you dropped it. There's no recover of like, oops, I'm still, oh no, 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 I meant to do that. No, they acknowledge that they dropped the ball literally and
Mm-hmm.
pick it back
Literally
up
dropped the
and
ball.
go again. And
Yeah.
they're being witnessed in all of it. And it makes failing so much less terrifying
Well, as
because
you're
it's,
saying it, oh, go ahead.
yeah, yeah, no, I think it's like as a performer, I was taught that I mean, no mistakes should be seen, right? It's like that, you can, and I would just grill myself after performances of all the things I didn't do well enough.
Hmm.
And what a liberating thing to not to actually completely drop a ball, pick it up and
Mm-hmm.
keep going and like take away this charge of messing up, being seen messing up. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know it's coupled with something unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, but I don't know. I'm just like growing in this appreciation for it.
I'm really getting off on this honesty piece. I just think it's so brilliant, because part of my hesitancy with performance is the honesty piece of, I'm giving you songs that I think are amazing, about stories that I think are amazing. I think I'm singing it amazingly. Yet I go out there with this facade of like, no big deal.
I
But I'm so curious, what would it be like to be that? There's a vulnerability to that, to
Oh
go out
yeah.
and just be like, I'm so proud of this song, and you're going to be too. Dun, 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 here we go.
Yeah.
It's like I want to do that now. I'm
Oh
performing
yeah.
one song next month in this like tribute show to Leonard Cohen. I don't know if you know him. It's like my
What? Of
favorite
course.
artist. Okay.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and so
Where?
I'm gonna do
When?
this. It's in Woodstock. It's at this a little club called Colony. They do it once a year. Such an amazing show, and he was a big part of my life growing up. His music. So I'm
Mm.
going to take all this there. I'm going to like hop on that stage and be like, this is the best rendition of this song you've ever heard. I'm just going to like play with it and really want the applause. but play with the part that the mess up is the failure part is so important to me because something that performers, really good performers I've seen do is they kind of get you on their side right away. Like you want them to succeed. So even when they mess up, it evokes this compassion. And you'd be like, I think you're great still. You're going to do it again. And we're all here to watch rather
Yeah.
than a shame that gets internalized, right? It's all about this honesty piece you're bringing into me. And it takes me back to relationship. There's like an
Yeah,
intimacy that allows you to relate to the crowd, right? Instead of the veneer of coolness and being pulled away.
totally. Oh, I love
All
that.
right. So inspiring. We need to talk about this more another time
Hmm.
because I would love to develop. I've been asked by so many people to develop some kind of webinar around performing through the somatic lens. So maybe we could play with that together.
Oh, I would love that. I think being seen, honestly, is a whole other realm for performers.
Hmm.
It's being seen is one thing, but being seen and being valued outside of the thing you're trained in, or being valued in the thing you're trained in. But there's something around the value piece that's interesting that I think
Hmm.
is, you know, perhaps why we're led to performance in the first place. Right,
Yeah.
so there's
Yeah.
the need for value and learning it, a relationship to it that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that. Thank you for
Hmm.
that. It was really the clarity that brought me feels really good.
I love how Luis embodies such an honest spirit of curiosity, how he openly wonders. There's something just so inviting about that. And I can't wait to step back into conversation with him. And I'm so excited to see how our personal work exploring performance weaves into our somatic work. Stay tuned.